is a chapter on personality. So here we're going to talk about theories of personality. We're finally going to talk about Sigmund Freud and some of his theories. Do you have a personality? I sure hope so, right? Of course you do, right? And it's a very unique one. If this was a smaller class, and actually I used to teach a course on the theories of personality, a whole 15-week course, and I would have you write what your personality is and tell me about all the traits and everything else. And if we did that, and if we sat in this class for, this is what, the 11th week of the semester, we'd probably get to know each other pretty well. And then you'd probably see how unique everyone is. Right? You all are very unique individuals with unique personalities. And we'll talk about the reasons for that today. So this is not for any points. This is just an opinion question. What is the primary factor that you think it is, that determines a person's personality? Do you think our personalities are formed in infancy by our parents and they've kind of molded us? You think a person's personality is more in their DNA, more in terms of genetics, that you were born with specific personality traits? Do you think it was more of situations across the lifespan create our personalities? Stuff happens in your life, and it's the way you react to it and the way the environment reacts to mold you? Or is it deep unconscious conflicts of the primary determinant of your personality? What do you think? What do you think is the primary factor? Now, what these questions are as well, we're going to do different theories, and there are many, many different theories of how we got to be who we are, and these are kind of some of the theories that are there. Some people really believe in one of these, and that's it, not the other one. And over the decades, various psychologists have argued about what was the greatest influence on us and how we got to be who we are. But in terms of what you're saying, majority of you say situations across the lifespan create our personalities, things that happen in our lives. In actuality, if I put a 5 on there, all of the above, really it probably would be all of the above, because all of these have an influence on you and how you got to be who you are. So how do you get to be who you are? Now, as I go through this chapter, once again, I'm going to give you the theories on this, but you also might want to sit here and think about, well, what about me? How did I get to be who I was? What was my greatest influences on me? And as I go through this chapter, I'll prompt you with some of those questions as well. Because once again, what I'm trying to do with you is give you the theories, but then have you think about yourselves. And a lot of us don't do this. We don't think about how we got to be who we are, which I guess since I'm trained as a psychologist, I always thought, how could you not think that way? Okay? Because it's all about your life. And the more you know about yourself, the better off I think you're going to wind up being. But how do we get to be who we are? Well, I've got an answer for that, right? It's the same answer I used for the whole semester. Okay? And that's an interaction between bio, okay? Remember the bio part? Genetics, okay? Neurochemicals, which is brain chemistry, hormones, right? Brain structure that's there. We look at the psychological part. We talked about life scripts, if you remember. We talked about conditioning and modeling. And then when we talked about social, we talked about all the environmental issues, culture and religion and parents and school and on and on. And all that together makes you who you are. Okay? And that's what makes you so unique, because the variables are so large. I mean, even if you have a brother or a sister, okay, people raised in the same family, similar environmental issues, not the same, but similar, okay, similar, some genetic structure that's there. The two of you can be completely different. Some similarities, but absolutely different because of all these different variables that are there. So we truly are very, very unique individuals. All right, what was the most important influence on your personality and how you get to be who you are? What's the most important influence? Neuropsychology, everything that goes on in the brain, parents, friends, religion, school. By the way, when we talk about who you are, okay, and I'm asking you now to think about that, from a practicing therapist point of view, what I tried to do with people, no matter what the issues were, is try to get people first to understand who they are. Right? So it's the old know thyself. then what I try to get people to do is once you figure out who you are, then you need to be able to accept yourself, right? Accept thyself with all your flaws and your strengths and everything else. Then the last part of all that is be thyself, right? Just be that self. Too many people are trying to be what other people want them to be or what they're striving to be, and some of us don't have the brain for math, okay? Or we don't have the brain for different things. So you really need to figure out who you are, know thyself, okay? Then you need to be able to or understand yourself, then be yourself. And the last one was be thyself, was know thyself, understand thyself, be thyself, know thyself, be thyself. So trying to work all of that out, it's going to lead your life to be much, much happier. Some of you are sitting here and say, well, that's me. I do all that. Well, that's great. You probably have a much easier life than other people who are trying to force themselves into being somebody that they're not. So the most greatest influence on a lot of you was parents. And you're absolutely right. You're with these people for an awful lot of years. Right? So they do have a huge influence on you, whether that be from a genetic standpoint as well as social influences that are there and life scripts. All right, so let's get into it. What is personality? This term personality, your personhood. It's an individual's unique and relatively stable behavior patterns. Relatively stable. Sigmund Freud said, by the time you're about 8 to 10 years old, okay, your personality is pretty well developed, and then you spend the rest of your life maybe adapting and changing just a little bit or modifying. But it's pretty well in place. And you might want to think about yourself at 8 and 10 years old. Did you change? Were you pretty similar to that? Or have you changed at all? Now, I think that, a lot of who we are were formed in our childhoods. And a lot of people, I don't think they change very much over their lifespan. I think we may modify our patterns, but I don't think we have a lot of drastic changes. Now, maybe you have had drastic changes. I'm not saying everybody, but I think we modify those as the years go on, as we get older. But most of us have a core, stable personality that you see develop during childhood, slightly modified in adolescent years, modified a little bit more young adulthood, and then what we see is a pretty consistent pattern occurring as people get older. Not a lot of change. When we talk about personality, we talk about a term called traits. Personality traits. And I think you've heard about that. What are your personality traits? Well, traits are relatively permanent and enduring qualities of behavior that a person displays in most situations. And a fellow by the name of Allport was one of the first people to write about personality traits that are there. So what are some of your traits? Are you outgoing? Are you shy? Are you honest? Are you genuine? Are you reflective? Are you introverted? Are you kind? Are you considerate? Are you da-da-da-da-da-da-da? Okay, all those different personality traits. The other day I said to you, what are some traits that you might be looking for in a prospective partner? You may have those listed that are there. Well, those are traits that you might look for. Those people might be looking for those traits in you as well. Our friendships a lot of times may be formulated based on certain traits. People who you get along with, that's there. So we find personality traits seem to be relatively permanent. Okay? Outgoing people usually maintain their outgoingness throughout their life. And then there's a term called type, personality types. Categories used to describe personality, with each category representing a collection of traits. So Carl Jung was someone who talked a lot about personality types. Hopefully you've never had somebody say to you, you're not my type. Okay? You're not what they mean is personality type. Hopefully you didn't go for a job and say, excuse me, but you're not the type of person we're looking for. Well, in psychology we usually say a type is made up of certain traits that are there. Now you can take personality tests. Okay, and there are hundreds, probably thousands of personality tests that you can take. Some are, like the California Personality Trait Inventory, talks about specific traits. So you answer these paper and pencil questions about you. Then at the end it says that on a scale of 0 to 10 that you are 9 on outgoingness and 7 on kindness and 6 on whatever the different traits are there, just to give you some information about yourself. The most famous test for types is something called the Myers-Briggs Personality Type Indicator. Some of you have taken that? No one has? Yes, some of you have, in speech class maybe, or in different classes. I know if you went for career testing, they'll give you the Strong Campbell Interest Inventory, and they usually give you the Myers-Briggs as well. And what it does is put you into 16 different personality types that are there. And each type indicates whether or not you're extroverted, introverted, intuitive, which means look at the big picture of things, or more detailed-minded, more logical and rational, or intuitive, or logical or rational, or feeling-based in your decisions. And the last one is how you live your life. Is it in a structured, organized way, or a more flexible, spontaneous way? So they pull all that together, and then what they've done is they've taken those 16 types, and then they've given that same test to like architects or physicists or counselors, and they compare the way you answer that to their answers, and they may say to you, you know, you have the personality type to be a psychologist or an educator, right? I used that particular test for many years in marriage counseling or relationship counseling, just to see where people match up as well as what their differences may be. Okay? Carl Jung once said, opposites attract, but they don't usually stay together. Okay? And people who are similar usually stay together, but they don't have a lot of excitement in their relationships. So you're trying to find somebody who is not completely different than you, but has some similar traits, so you have similar interests and do things together, but a little bit of difference so you can learn from it. And I'll talk more about Jung and some of his theories as well. All right, so what are your traits? What do you think your types would be? And once again, if you want to go to the Career Testing Center, all that's for free. You don't have to pay for that. Might be fun just to go take some of those tests, battery of tests that are there. You can go online, and there is the Myers-Briggs. The full version of it is not online, but there's a smaller version of it online that you can take and do that. It's always fun to kind of give it to someone you're dating, too, just to see what they're like. You can also go to Martin Seligman's site, Positive Learn to Optimism. If you type that in, and he'll bring you to a site, and he has all kinds of personality tests that are very, very good. I mean, they're very well documented, they're researched, they're statistically reliable and valid, and they're for free. All you have to do is agree to become part of one of his studies, because he'll use your results to do some demographics and do some correlational studies on. But those are interesting to do as well. All right, I'll shut up. Self-concept, perception of yourself. That's another thing we look at when we look at personality. Right? What is your self-concept? And by the way, there are various psychological tests about this as well that tell you about yourself. If I said to you, what do you like physically? What do you like emotionally? What's your view of yourself in regards to intellectual, emotional, social, physical, spiritual? Well, that is what your perception of yourself. Who am I? This is how I think I am. Interesting to ask your friends, if you have your friends that gutsy enough, or people you go out and say, well, tell me about myself. What do you think of me? Gutsy enough to do that and let your friends tell you some things. But that would be, does it match your perception? Some of you, your perceptions don't match the way your friends think of yourself, okay, or the way you really act. But we take a look at that. If you look at personality tests, okay, and there's, like I said, thousands of them that are out there, if you did a multiple variable analysis on them, what you'd come up with, most tests look at what's called the 5-factor model. The 5-factor model. That most tests are going to talk something about you in regards to these 5 factors. So let me give you a better description of these. And the spelling is still there for you. So as you sit here now, you might want to ask yourself, if these are the 5 big factors, what do you like in regards to your extroversion? Do you have a 0 to 10 score? A 0 would be you're more of a loner, quiet, passive, reserved, or a high score of being a joiner, talkative, active, very affectionate. Where are you on that? Oh, I'm not really low. I'm not all of those, but I have some of those. Well, maybe you're a 3 or a 4. You're leaning towards that level, or maybe you're leaning towards the other. Or maybe some of you, yeah, that's me. I'm a joiner. I'm talkative. I'm active and affectionate. Woo-hoo. I'm a 10 on that one. The importance of any time you ever take a personality test or any of these tests is not what the test says to you. You don't want to walk out and say, oh, this is who I am. You don't want to do that, but you want to say, well, it's something to think about. Something to think about. All right, where am I? There's something, it's good information for me to think about and then either agree or disagree with what these tests are saying. How do you fall on the agreeable scale? Suspicious, critical, ruthless, irritable, or trusting, lenient, and soft-hearted on the other side? Where do you fall on the conscientious side? Are you neglectant, lazy, disorganized, late all the time? Those people haven't come into class yet. Okay? Are you conscientious, hardworking, well-organized, punctual? Where are you on that? 0, 1, 5, 7, 8. Neuroticism. Are you calm, even-tempered, comfortable, unemotional, or worried, temperamental, self-conscious, emotional? Recognize that if you look at these words, some of these words sound positive, some don't sound so positive. But they're kind of mixed up, aren't they, in both levels that are there? And again, the answer is to this is just the way people are. Right? We should be able to figure out what our strengths are, use those strengths in our lives, but then also recognize where we have some work to do and what some of our weaknesses are and try to work on those. And the last one is how open are you to experience, down to earth, uncreative, conventional, uncurious, or the opposite of that, imaginative, creative, original, and curious. Where do you fall on all of these? Who are you? What are you all about? There's another statement that I'll make to you is that what we really need to know is we need to know the strength of our weaknesses and the weaknesses of our strengths. What does that mean? That people who fall in that balanced level there are probably healthier. These are my strengths, the things I do well, but the things you do well may also have a negative side to it. Okay? And the things that you don't do so well may also have a positive side to it, because there are balances to that. You're a very genuine, trusting, honest, open person. That's a real strength. That's great. The downside to that is you probably get taken advantage of a lot, okay, because you're so giving and everything else. So you got to watch that and learn to develop some balances that are there. So that's what we talk about understanding who you are, knowing yourself, accepting yourself, and being yourself. Just for the fun of it, this is one of these fun of it little personality tests. It doesn't have a lot of statistical reliability or validity to it, okay? But it's just kind of fun to do. What they did is they asked people, what style of music do you enjoy the most? And you were to pick 3. Right now, pick 3. What music you're really into. This is my 3 favorite types of music. I know there are other music that some of you listen to. I don't have up here. This wasn't my study. This was somebody else's study. Then what they did is they interviewed people, okay? They figured out what styles they liked. They interviewed them. They gave them personality profiles. And they came up with characteristics of people who enjoy certain types of music. So you ready? You got your 3? All right, so if you're into blues, jazz, classical, or folk, now, if you just see all 3 of yours are up there right now, then we'd probably say you have a high correlation, a high positive correlation with these characteristics. So if you have all 3 of these, I'd probably say that you, people who have aesthetic experiences, have good verbal abilities and are liberal and tolerant of others, tend to like music this type of music tends to be reflective and complex. If 3 of yours are up there, that's probably you. 2 out of 3, probably quite a few of those traits are you. 1 out of 3, pick the 1 or 2 traits that are you out of that. Those of you who are into rock, alternative, or heavy metal, These are people who are curious about new experiences, enjoy taking risks, and are physically active, prefer intense, rebellious music. 3 out of 3, that's probably you, right? 2 out of 3, more like you. 1 out of 3, you pick some words out. I haven't got to, probably a lot of you are here. Country, soundtrack, religious, pop music. These people are cheerful, conventional, extroverted, reliable, helpful. They're conservative, and they tend to enjoy upbeat, conventional type of mainstream music. 3 out of 3, that's probably you. 2 out of 3, a little less. 1 out of 3, pick words out. And then probably a lot of you are rap, hip-hop, soul, funk, electronic dance, whatever you call it. These people are talkative, full of energy, forgiving, and I don't know how they came up with the physically attractive part for this one, but I guess they were looking at people when they did this, and who reject conservative ideals, tend to prefer energetic, rhythmic music. 3 out of 3, is this you? 2 out of 3, 1 out of 3. Once again, it's a correlational study done that's just kind of fun to do and to look at. So where are you people? The category most fit into is which one? Now some of you your top 3 might be blues, alternative, and country or something like that. So it's hard to fit you in the different spots. You people are just unique and different. But once you like one music, by the way, usually you kind of blend to the other one. So what do we got in this class? I shouldn't have done that one. It's always hard for me to read. Let's see, I'll look up here. Oh, I can do it up here. 47% of you are, number 4, right? Rap, hip-hop, soul, funk. I have a big portion, 28, who are mainstream people. I got 15% of you are rock, alternative. And then the aesthetic people, blues, jazz, and classical folk. A little smaller level that's there, right? But that's you. Is it right? Is it wrong? Well, when we study personality, we try to say, no, there's no right or wrong. This is just who you are. Let's talk about the different theorists now. Sigmund Freud. Picture of Sigmund Freud where his always present cigar that he always had in his hand. When I explain to you what his theories are, then you can tell me what that cigar may have symbolized, okay, as we go through this. Sigmund Freud was probably considered to be the father of modern-day psychology. He wrote in the early 1900s, okay, through about the 1920s, early 1930s, okay. Everybody else who I will be presenting to you reacted to Freud, because Freud was the first one really to write about this. Very unique, very brilliant man, kind of looks like his personality himself. He was a very strict, conservative, authoritarian individual. You don't want to get into an argument with him because he was always right. Some of the main parts of his theories, nowadays when we read about his theories, we kind of go, you're a little weird, Freud. I wonder what was going on with your mother when you were growing up. Okay, because some of his theories we kind of laugh about, but some of them I think were right on target. Matter of fact, Sigmund Freud's getting to be popular again. Okay, there was a time there where it was kind of like, we'll just talk about him for about 5 minutes, but he's becoming popular again because of the research that's done on the brain. Some of Sigmund Freud's works and his theories seem to match up with what we now know about the brain. So maybe he was really onto something here. The first thing that he talked about was called the structure of the personality. Each and every single one of you, according to Freud, have an id, superego, and an ego. It's the basic structure, foundation, okay, of your personality. What's the id? The id is the playful child that you have within you. It's the child that runs on what's called the pleasure principle. I want to be pleased, and I want to please now. I want to be pleased now. I want to be, you know what the word hedonistic means? It's all for pleasure. I want everything, and I want it now. I just want to have a good time. Life is just fun. Please me, please me, please me. One is the id developed during infancy. Right? During infancy. I'm hungry. Give it to me now. My diaper needs to be changed. I'm bored. Pick me up. Me. It's all about me. Now, Freud said, though, even as adults, we sure have an id within us. Okay, we have an id there, a little child that might be a playful child, but maybe a spoiled child, or a lost child, or a hurt child, okay, or a wounded child, according to Freud, that we have deep within our unconsciousness that's there. It's the id that lies deep in our unconsciousness. It pops up every once in a while, especially if it's stored in the unconsciousness. Drink a little too much, smoke a little too much. Sometimes you're no longer thinking about consciously what's going on. All of a sudden you do things like, whoo-hoo, okay, without thinking about, like a little child would, right? No remorse whatsoever. Next morning you might, but at that time you don't. Why? Because the id kind of takes over on you. The opposite of the id is called the superego. The opposite of the id. The superego develops around 2, 3, 4 years old. The superego is the parent that's within you. All right? It's this. It's poking your finger and saying, don't do this. This is what good boys do. This is what good girls do. It's all of the laws, regulations, mores, parental influences that tell you the way you should, must, have to run your lives. Freud always said deep within our unconsciousness there's a battle going on there between the id and the superego. And the more battle you have, the more neurotic you got, according to Freud, okay? And the more anxiety that you had, okay? I always think of this as, do you remember when you were a little kid, you used to watch these really old cartoons? Some of them were probably in black and white. And there was a devil on one shoulder and the angel on the other shoulder. And the devil was telling the kid, let's go do that. I don't care. Just do it. Well, that's the id. And the superego was like the angel going, no, don't do that. You're not a good boy. People won't like you if you do that. Okay? So there's always that battle that goes on there. According to Freud, the balance between the id and the superego is something called the ego. And the ego is the adult that's within you, who wants to be emotional and caring and have fun, but also recognizes you need to live in this society and abide by its rules. If Freud said to you, you have a strong ego, that was a compliment, because that meant you were able to balance it off and live a good, healthy, adult-like, mature life. Nowadays, if we say, God, that guy's got such a big ego, okay, we really mean he's conceited, right? But Freud didn't use that term that way. It was the balance that people have. Id, ego, superego. I like this. I think Freud was on to something here. Okay? I think we all do have an id, superego, ego within us. Some of you are too id-driven. It's all about pleasure and fun. And those people probably aren't sitting here anymore. They dropped out. Okay? Some of you are too superego-driven. Okay, what am I going to do today? I'm going to get my little list. I'm going to get things done. Go, 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 go. Good, 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 good. You don't have a lot of fun. Hopefully more of you are ego-balanced and can balance off. Let that id out every once in a while and let the superego out every once in a while. So you're sitting in this class, somebody comes in late, and it's a really attractive person who comes in. And your id right away goes, ho, 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 I want to be with her or him. Yeah, like now. That's what I want. Maybe I'll just say to him or her, let's go do it now. Come on. Okay? Because that's your id, right? That's your id going, I want it. Now the superego is probably also in your head, okay? In your consciousness as well as your unconsciousness, and is saying, God, that's gross. Grow up, will you? What do you think you are, 12 again, or 14? God, that's inappropriate what you're saying. That's evil. You're bad. That's sinful. Don't do that. Okay? And then your ego goes, well, wait a minute now. She is kind of hot, or he's kind of hot. We do want to experience that. No, we can't do that. So then the ego, if you have a strong ego, may come up with a plan, which is, let's introduce ourselves. After class go, oh, that was really kind of strange what he was talking about the id and superego. And what do you think when Freud talked about penis envy? What was that all about? That was kind of weird. He's a weird guy, wasn't it, Freud? And you talk a little bit, and then the next day you talk again, the next day you talk again, then you have a cup of coffee, then you have lunch, then you have dinner, then you have sex. Now, what the ego is doing is saying, hey, hey, let's balance it off. We'll get what you want, but let's do it in a socially appropriate way. Okay? That's the balance that's there. Next week, we'll be talking about psychological disorders, and we're going to talk about multiple personalities. Okay? When you look at multiple personalities, there are always 3 distinct personalities first. 3 distinct personalities. What are they? A child who's been wounded and hurt, a super parental ego, super ego that's there, a parent that's trying to keep this person alive and stay at work and do different things and is very controlling, okay? And then there's an adult part that tries to help the person live their life. You get the id, superego, and ego, and then they split off from there. Sure seems to me that we all have this within us. And where does this all play out? What plays out in what Freud came up with was levels of awareness. A lot of this goes on in the unconsciousness you're not even aware of. A lot of it we're conscious of, like you're conscious of your ego. Your id, by the way, you're not conscious of your id. Okay? The pre-consciousness is what's in between the consciousness and the unconsciousness. Things kind of bubble up sometimes from the unconsciousness. Sometimes you're just kind of laying around, you're getting kind of relaxed, and all of a sudden some thought pops up out of nowhere. It comes into the pre-consciousness. And then when it hits the pre-consciousness, there's one of those, what was that? What was that? And then when it hits the consciousness, it's clear. I would say, in some regards, the pre-consciousness is your intuition. I can't put my finger on it, but I don't like him. Why? I don't know. I don't like him. It may be this intuition, and then you don't know, and then you figure it out when it becomes part of your consciousness. Did you ever hear something called a Freudian slip? A Freudian slip is when you have unconscious feelings, but you're not aware of them, and they slip out from the pre-consciousness to the consciousness. So you have a opposite sex friend, and you're heterosexual. Okay? Opposite sex friend, and you're heterosexual, and they're your friend. No romantic interest whatsoever. What do we call it? A platonic relationship, right? And you're going out, and you're having a good time, and you both had too much to drink, okay? And you come home, and your platonic friend says, come on, I'll walk you to the door. It's kind of dark out. So they walk you to the door, okay? And they say, oh, good night. And they always give each other a hug and a kiss. But a lot of times the hug is kind of like this. And you kiss, maybe someone's on the lips or the chin. But this time you're like, oh, yeah. And they rub their pelvic area on your pelvic area, and they give you this big kiss on your lip. And they pull away, and both of you go, oh. And he goes, well, honey, sweetie, love, well, I'll see you tomorrow. All of a sudden, these words come popping out, love, sweetie, care, and he gives this big kiss, and he's embarrassed, and you're embarrassed, and the next morning we go, I don't know why I did that, you're my best friend, I don't know what the deal is. It's called a Freudian slip, because deep down in his unconsciousness, they don't want to be friends anymore, okay, and what happens, it just kind of slips out sometimes, a Freudian slip. You know, some of you, when you're in an argument with somebody, you just you blast them sometimes, and then you say, well, I don't know why I said that. That just kind of slipped out. I really didn't mean it. I meant that was a joke, really. It slipped out. Now, I need to go to their defense and say sometimes they don't even know they feel that way because it came out of their unconsciousness. So this is where all this is stored. All right? The id resides in the unconsciousness. A lot of times we're not aware of those impulses that are there. The superego goes through all 3. The ego is in all 3 as well, but it's much more visible. We show to people what we think we should be living our life like, all the have-tos and shoulds, and also our ego side. But the id rolls around in the bottom there. One point. In Freudian theory, the blank is the executive structure which is directed by the reality principle. I consciously did not tell you this. What I told you was that what the id worked on what principle? The pleasure principle, right? I want. I just gave away the answer. Okay? And the Superego was what? The parental part, the mores, morals, religious aspects that are there. So the answer is id, ego, Superman, or the libido. I didn't mean to give it away, but I just did. Some of you weren't listening, and you won't get it. Okay, we're done? All right, the answer is the superego. Come on. 79% are correct. No, the id is that childlike part that works on the pleasure principle. The ego, the balance part, works on the reality principle. And the superego, okay, is going to work more on the moral principle that's there, but what's right and what's wrong. Okay? All right, let's talk about Freud's most controversial part of his theory. Now, once again, Freud was the first person to talk about how what happened in your childhood, okay, is going to make you who you are and will predict how your personality develops, okay, as an adult. He was one of the first people to write about that. So he came up with a theory that said as you go through these psychosexual stages, based on your age, that's how your personality is going to develop, based on how you resolve these little issues. So as you go through these, you can giggle and laugh a little bit about some of these, because we kind of do, but I think it's interesting just to see what his theories are, because many, many theories after him, okay, reacted to his stuff. The first one is called the oral stage of development. Now, there was another word on the previous slide that said libido. The libido, according to Freud, is your energy level that you have. And it's very related to your sex drive. That's why nowadays we say if you have a low libido, what we mean is a low sex drive. But what Freud said is that we all have a life instinct buried in our unconsciousness and a death instinct buried in our unconsciousness. And this life instinct is attached to, okay, the libido, the drive that you have. Freud also says it can be seen in all humans as a sex drive as well. This drive to procreate, this drive even to have sex that's there. So what Freud talked about in the oral stage of development, that an infant has this energy, this libido. Now, they don't want to have sex, right? They're an infant that's there, but they have all this energy, and this energy comes up, and somehow or another they need to learn to calm down that energy and manage that energy. How are they going to do that? Well, with the most well-developed part of their body, which is their mouth. So how does a child become passive and calm down? The mother's breast, the bottle, a thumb in their mouth, or a pacifier that we give kids. The kids just go, and they calm down. According to Freud, this is a real important way for a child to learn to regulate that energy. If the child they do not get weaned off the bottle, if you keep them on the damn pacifier too long and everything else, according to Freud, they may become orally fixated when they're adults. Therefore, they never learn to control their impulses. Therefore, they do drugs too much, okay? They talk too much. They shout things out all the time, okay? See what this is Freud said, what goes on in your childhood will predict how you become. So he said, depends upon how you work through these stages. Those of you who are weaned off the bottle appropriately and all that is fine, you don't have any oral fixations. The next stage is the anal stage of development, and this is where a child begins to develop the superego. The id develops during what? The oral stage, but the superego develops during the anal stage. Why? Because when a child is 2, 3, and 4, and 5 years old, they learn from their parents what they should do and what they shouldn't do. This is where a parent says, no, don't touch that. No, do that. Eat with a fork. Okay? Don't put that in your mouth. You're eating too much. This is where we're told how to live our lives, right? Now, one of the issues that Freud noticed, he used as a symbol of this stage, was teaching a child to be toilet trained. It's the first time you tell a child, no, you can't just let go anytime you want in oral development. Now you need to hold it in and wait and do it over there on that toilet. So the child is learning what? Rules and regulations about how to live their lives. So toilet training becomes symbolic. So Freud says if you weren't toilet trained correctly, okay, what winds up happening, you could become anally fixated. So some of you may become anal retentive. Have you ever heard that word? Oh, you're so anal. You're so anal retentive. These are the people that are always holding things in. All the time, holding things in. They're very controlling people. They're very organized people. Okay? They're always allowing themselves for... they're not very impulsive. Everything is planned out and organized. If you go into their house, everything is in order. The forks are in order. The spoons are in order. If you go into their closets are all very, very organized. Winter, spring, summer, fall clothing, shoes underneath it. Okay? Everything is super organized. Okay? That's how they live their life, in a very controlling manner. But maybe you didn't wind up that way. You're anal impulsive, which meant you never learned to control. So what do? You just let loose in your whole life. You spend your money all over the place. Where the anal retentive holds on to their money, they're stingy. What winds up happening, you go in their house, go into their closet, their clothes are like all over the floor. And when they say, I need to wear something today, and they go in there and they toss things around because they're so impulsive about everything. They're not very organized. So what he's doing is saying, that's how you wound up to be who you are because of these issues. Now, the next one is the most controversial one, okay? And this is where the child, according to Freud, the child is becoming aware of their sexuality a little bit more. They're beginning to feel these little feelings they have for other people. I like you. I want to hug you. That's there. And now, by the way, they're not sexual, because we're talking about 5 years old, 6 years old. It's not, children aren't, gee, I want to have sex with you. They just have these feelings. According to Freud, boys, okay, go through what's called an Oedipus complex. A boy becomes very attracted to his mother, okay? He wants to be with his mother, okay? Wants to sit in mommy's lap, give mommy hugs, kiss mommy, okay? Because he wants to possess his mother and get rid of his father. Now remember, according to Freud, all of this is unconscious. That's why it's so hard to prove Freud's work, because it's all unconscious. Okay? It's unconscious. The little boy doesn't say, gee, Mom, I'd like to have sex with you. No. The little boy is just saying, I like my mommy. I just have this feeling to be around my mommy. Boy, you can observe this sometimes. Sometimes you see little boys climbing into their mommy's laps, giving mom a hug, and looking over at dad going, my mommy. It's my mommy. Don't you come near my mommy. It's my mommy. Mom and dad are hugging and kissing. Little boy goes in between mom and dad, pushes him away, grabs mom and goes, it's my mommy. Leave her alone. Okay? Climbs in the bed, pushes his feet right in dad's back. Get out of here. I want to be with my mommy. No, yes, yeah, that does happen. But the little boy, as he gets a little bit older, begins to recognize that daddy's bigger, taller, stronger. He sleeps with mommy, I don't. Okay? There are little different views that are going on there, the way they hug and kiss, the way I hug and kiss. And he begins to get a little bit afraid of his dad. And the reason why he gets afraid of his dad, because unconsciously he develops something called the castration anxiety he has. Because he's afraid that dad may recognize that he's trying to get rid of dad and get mom for himself, and he's afraid that dad may come along and cut off his penis, castrate him, and then turn him into, this is Freud's works, what Freud said, turn him into an inferior being called a female. Okay? Freud lived and wrote during the Victorian era. During the Victorian era, they considered women to be inferior. So this was Freud's way of saying, well, why do boys think they're superior? Why are they superior? Okay, well, the reason being is because of this castration anxiety. So at a certain age, little boys are going to push away from their mother and hang out with their dads. Dress like their dads, be with their dads, be a dad. And identify that. If the little boy doesn't go through that, and he doesn't get away from his mom, he's going to wind up as an adult, okay, looking to marry somebody who's like his mommy. Somebody to take care of him. Some of you women have gone out with those guys. They're mommy's boys, okay? And they're looking for a mommy and somebody just to take care of him. And they can be the most macho guy in the world, but it's still like, honey, would you? Honey, would you? Would you get this? Would you do this for me? Would you do this for me? Because they're still looking for a mommy. Now the girls go through something as well. It's called the Electra complex. They climb into daddy's lap, give daddy a hug, look at mommy and go, it's my daddy. Stay away from my daddy. Do the same thing, pushing mommy away. But the little girl doesn't go through castration anxiety. She doesn't have one of those. But what she goes through is something called, you're really going to laugh at this one, penis envy. Okay? Because what she's envious of is the man's penis, because that's the symbol of superiority. So what happens here is she begins to identify with her mother, because she can't compete with her, so she identifies with her and realizes her position in life as an inferior being, and therefore becomes a woman. Don't throw things at me, that's what he said. Freud had a daughter, her name was Anna Freud. Became a very popular and well-known writer in psychology as well. What was the first thing that she tossed out? Oh, all this stuff. She had some really great arguments with her dad. It's kind of like, you really thought that I wanted to be with you? You know, like your views are right. Let me tell you about who's superior and inferior. So, go girl. She came on pretty strong to him, which was great. She was one of the only people really to argue with Freud. Freud says when we hit the latency stage, which is about first, second, third grade, 7, 8, 9 years old, a lot of that libido is hidden, it's latent, it's not there, it's pushed down below in your unconsciousness, but it's a normal time where we want to be with our same-sex friends. Boys are with boys, girls with girls. If you're a boy and you're in first grade, you hate girls. Girls are yucky. If you're a girl, boys drool and girls rule or something like that. Okay? If you're a first grade teacher and you go, good, let's have 5 boys and 5 girls all in the same group, forget about it. Massive fights going. I don't want to be with those girls. Those girls always tell us what to do. Hate you girls. Yeah, well, you boys are pigs anyway. Look at you. You're so sloppy. You always ruin everything. You're stupid. Okay? Now, you don't remember that? First boy hating clubs and I hate you, girl hating. Well, that's what Freud talked about. Get this, though. He also says it's a normal, latent, hidden homosexual time where you become buddies and buddies with your buddies and you hang out all over them. Girls kiss each other and hang out with each other. Oh, you're my best buddy and stuff. And they connect that way. Not that it's homosexual, but it's a latent homosexual time that you have an attraction to your same-sex friends. Freud said, get stuck in this level that's there, you probably grew up to be homosexual. Okay? No research to back that up, but that's just Freud's theories. By the way, the girl with the Electra complex will grow up later on in life and look for a sugar daddy, somebody to take care of her. Somebody to take care of her. The genital stage is the last stage. Freud says if you make it to that, everything is fine, you'll be healthy. The genital stage, he says, is a normal time where our sexual drives become more conscious and we work it out in a more healthier way. But what Freud said was what? You go through these stages and you can predict what happens to people and their patterns of personality are developed later in their lives. Kind of weird stuff, right? Kind of interesting. So what do you think? Freud was a fraud? Strongly agree here. I don't like Freud. He's a weird guy. He was a fraud. Neutral, some of the stuff is good, some of it isn't. Or disagree. Okay, no, I don't think he was. Disagree, strongly disagree. You're saying there that you thought he was pretty interesting stuff. All right? So we got, a lot of you kind of neutral. I kind of feel the same way. Although the more I read about Freud, the more some of his stuff, I think, this is my answer, not the correct answer. I think some of his stuff was pretty interesting. Now, the Oedipus complex and all that other stuff, he had good observations that are there, but the more we learn about the brain, and the more we realize there might be an unconsciousness, there might be a preconsciousness that are there, looking at the id, ego, and superego, I think he's got something there. Let's talk about another guy by the name of Carl Jung. Carl Jung is not very popular. There's only one little section in your book about him, but I'm going to spend a little bit more time on him. He was a protege of Freud. Okay, he worked with Freud, and Freud considered him to be kind of like his second son, and he was going to be to write and continue on in Freud's work because he was a younger man than Freud. Except that Jung completely disagreed with Freud on a lot of stuff. By the way, it's always fun to look at these people's backgrounds and see how their personality developed, and you wonder, I know it influenced their personality theories. Freud's mother was only like 18 or 19 years old. She was married to Freud's father, who was in his late 40s, I think. She was his second wife, I believe. Freud actually had sisters that were his mother's age and older. Freud was a very, very spoiled little boy. His father was absent a lot, was distant a lot. He was a mama's boy, did everything for his mommy. Okay? Must be some of his theories tied into that. Carl Jung, was the only member of his family who was not a minister. His father was a minister, his grandfather was a minister, his great-grandfather, his great-great-great-grandfather, his great-great-great-great-grandfather, on and on. He actually grew up in a church and actually had his room above the church in the attic up there. Highly spiritual in his beliefs. He was also a well-known anthropologist, not in training, but he went around really researching different religions and cultures throughout the world. His theories are a little bit different. You ready? Stay awake. Okay? This is always a chapter where people kind of disappear a little bit. So come on back. Focus again. Sigmund Freud said we all had an unconsciousness, right? Jung called it a personal unconsciousness. That personal unconsciousness is all the memories you have of your current life. Everything that's happened to you in your current life. Jung said no. We don't have just a personal unconsciousness, we have a collective unconsciousness. And the collection unconsciousness is a collection of all of the memories of the entire human race you have access to. You have access to your parents' memories, their parents' memories, their parents' memories, their parents' memories, their parents' memories, all the way back to, according to Jung, to the Godhead, where we all came from. Not only do you have access to these memories, but when you put a thought out there, she can pick it up at the same time. But it's unconscious. Okay? It's all there. We are all connected through a life force that's there. And he says, I even have proof of this. I have proof through something called archetypes. Archetypes of symbols that are used by all cultures to indicate what might be going on in the unconsciousness. Archetypes are displayed in regards to artwork, music, theater productions, literature, religious symbols, icons that are there. Carl Jung said, I've studied the different religions of the world. They all have similar mythologies. It just depends on what type of the world you grew up in, but they're all very, very similar. Carl Jung was one of the first people in the world says, if we're all this similar, we're all connected, and our religions are so similar, why are we killing each other in the name of our gods? Because we think our God is better than your God, and I'm going to kill you because you don't believe in my God. Which has gone on, what? Forever. That's there. So as he began to study archetypes and symbols, he said, we're all pretty similar. That's there. There's an interconnection. How did they develop from an anthropological standpoint? The pyramids in Mexico. How did they do things at the similar time in Egypt and similar times in South America and similar times in China when people couldn't get together? You couldn't get on the internet and communicate. How did an idea spring up in 4000 BC over here and spring up at the same time over there? What happened? Okay, did Kontiki go in his raft and go across? It still took a long time to do that. Why does it happen instantaneously? He said, well, maybe it's because when someone puts a thought out there, it's carried all around. Later on, the Einsteinian physics talk with us about quantum mechanics, and they talk about that does happen, that you have subatomic particles in you right now, and right now they're popping out of me, and you're getting them, and they become part of your structure that's there. Maybe there's something there. By the way, the people who really like Carl Jung are people who are psychics and into all of this, because it kind of fits in part of what's called parapsychology. But archetypes, the numbers 3 and 7, seem to be important in just about all religions and cultures that are there. The mythologies the mythologies that are there of how we were all created are very, very similar. And then you look at pictures. Okay, one of the most classic types of structures is what's called the mandala. And the mandala is basically concentric circles. Circles within circles and circles. Give a pencil or a crayon for a child, the first thing he's going to do is do this. He does circles and circles and circles, as if it's unconsciously based in our brain. And as you go through the cultures and societies, they come up with similar mandalas, but in different references. A big part of Carl Jung's theories is we're working towards the balance. If you want to understand men, you need to understand the woman within you. Women, if you want to understand women, you need to understand the masculine part within you. The yin and the yang, that's here. The strengths and the weaknesses, the balances that are there. These are all pictures of different mandalas and different cultures that are there, and different religions that are there. The basis of human behavior and psychology. Okay, the sand images. Okay, all similar images at different times that seem to be roosted in people's brains. Carl Jung wrote a story, talked a lot about these symbols. A man by the name of Joseph Campbell came along and wrote a book called The Hero with 1,000 Faces. Anybody ever see Star Wars? Of course, most of you have seen all of them and seen them twice. Well, isn't J.J. Abraham doing the new Star Wars series? Right? You know who he is? The guy who did all the new Star Trek stuff. Should be pretty cool. And he's going to come out with number, what would it be, 7 or something like that in 2015. Okay? So when George Lucas was writing a story, he went to Joseph Campbell and said, yeah, you know, you're the noted mythologist. Joseph Campbell is a noted mythologist. And he said, Joseph Campbell, he says, I want you to come to my ranch, and I want to pick your brain for a couple of weeks. So come to my Skywalker ranch, and while there, what I want to do is I want you to tell me, I want to write a story that anybody in the world, no matter what religion they're in, what culture they're part of, will sit down, okay, and watch this movie I want to develop and get a similar unconscious reaction to it. So Joseph Campbell said, that's easy. What you need to do is tell a story of the hero with 1,000 faces. It's exactly the same story that's told through all mythology, all religions, all cultures, has the same story. Those are the different faces, what of different cultures and times that are there, but it's the same story told. What's the same story? It's your story. A person, a child who's born into the world, who as he goes through life has to what? Face the dark side and the light side, the good and the bad, good and evil, constantly over and over again. Not insulting your religions, but it's the story of Joseph. It's the story of, of Jesus. It's the story of Muhammad. It's the story of Buddha. It's the story of Krishna. And you can go on and on and on. That's there. It's the same story of someone who's struggling in their lives, goes out into the world and has what? An adventure, okay? Learns about themselves, is tempted, right, to go to the dark side, but eventually finds a teacher, okay? Somebody's around who can teach them. Then they learn the true stories that are there. Then they bring it back to help humankind. It's the same story told over and over and over again. It's the story of the Star Wars mythology that supposedly resonates, okay, of Luke Skywalker, the same child who goes out, who's often fights the dark side, he's got the light side, has Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda as his teachers, okay, goes on, conquers the dark side, and eventually brings it back to free his people. Same story told over and over again. It's the Chronicles of Narnia. Same story. It's the Hobbit or the Lord of the Rings. It's the same story. Okay? It's Gilgamesh. Okay? It's the Greek mythology. Okay? It's the Matrix. It's, God, most adventure stories. It's similar stories told over and over again. Why does it resonate with all of us? Because it's your story. It's what we all go through. We're all on what? A journey. Try to figure out who we are, what we're all about, and face the light and dark side. That go over your heads? Okay, are you with me with this? Okay? If you want to go back and watch what episodes 4, 5, and 6 of Star Wars, the original 3 that's there, they're not that exciting anymore. Back when it first came out, a lot of technology. Now they're kind of slow. Okay? But it's full of symbolism. All kinds of symbolism. The names of the people have symbols in it. There's a scene there when Luke Skywalker is in this cave and he's fighting Darth Vader and he rips off Darth Vader's mask. And who is it? It's Luke inside there. It's himself trying to face what his dark side that's there. There's a scene in there where the first one, where he goes in and has to blow up the Death Star, is that what it was called? Okay? And he's trusting technology to do it, and he can't trust technology. And sociologists have done this study. It's not working. And then he hears what? Obi-Wan that says, trust in the Force, Luke. Trust in the Force, Luke. And supposedly throughout the world, when people were watching that movie, when they monitored it, when he said that, people throughout the world went, ooh, yeah. Why? Because we have this spiritual sense to us that there's a higher being that we want to connect with and everything else. So he throws the mask off, trusts his intuition, his humanity, blows up the dark star that's there. Full of symbolism throughout those movies. And that's why they resonate with all kinds of generations. Right? They first came out in the 70s. They were re-released in late 90s, was it? That were there and still had the following that was there. What do you think about Carl Jung? He was weird. What's this stuff about collective unconsciousness, that we all have this spiritual connection that's there? Strongly agree? Yeah, he was weird. What a weird dude. Okay? Or do you say, no, he may have something going on? Again, Jung doesn't take up much in your psych book anymore. It's just like a little paragraph that's there. He's just not that popular anymore. Hard to prove his stuff. Really hard to prove Freud stuff that's there. But it's always interesting to talk about. All right, so what do you think? You're kind of neutral about, I think you can be neutral about all these people. Okay? I like Jung. I think he's fascinating. According to Carl Jung, for one point, art, religion, myths, and drama are important to individual functioning because they what? They facilitate conscious underdevelopment, provide the means for achieving control over a hostile environment, contain symbols that appear to basic archetypes, or transmit specific information for solving developmental tasks. Taken by itself, some of these theories are pretty accurate, some of them are kind of weird. Both these men, to some extent, got a little too extreme in some of their views. I need to do this. All right, so we left off talking about Carl Jung, and I don't think I started on Skinner yet, did I? No. All right, so we finished what's called the psychoanalytic views, where they're analyzing basically your personality. So Freud and Jung tried to answer the question, how'd you get to be who you are? Freud and Jung were some of the first people to write on this, and they were the first people to talk about basically what happened in your childhood could predict how you come out to be as an adult. Well, another fellow comes along who wrote a good 30 or 40 years after Freud and Jung, and his name is B.F. Skinner. And B.F. Skinner is one of the individuals who wrote about learning theories, and we've actually covered this a couple of times already. This is also the chapter that we did on conditioning. Remember that we did a whole chapter on conditioning? Sometimes you'll see learning theories depicted as behaviorism. How did you get to be who you are? Well, it's based on a collection of learned behaviors. It had nothing to do with castration anxiety or penis envy. Okay? It didn't have anything to do with collective unconsciousness. Okay? And basically Skinner, when he read all that stuff, really kind of laughed at that. Basically said, oh, it's kind of funny. Where do you people come up with this information like that? And then to Skinner, it was, how do you prove it? How do you prove it? Well, it's real difficult to prove any of Jung's work and in a lot, especially Freud's work. So basically what Skinner said, and Dollard and Miller as well, are two other individuals, basically what they said was, how did you get to be who you are? You're born blank, okay? You're born blank, okay? There's no instincts, nothing going on. You're just born blank. And then what happens, your environment molds you, conditions you into being who you are. All right, so it's all about your environment and what the conditioning you went through. What did you get reinforced for? What did you get punished for? So if you were a very honest person, what's happening if you're an honest person is that you told the truth and your parents or somebody went, good, I'm glad you do that. This is what we do. We tell the truth. And you were reinforced for that. And every time you told the truth, okay, you were reinforced for it. Therefore, you grew up to be an honest person. Or you were dishonest and you got caught. Therefore, you got punished and told not to do it. And then you were honest the next time. Then you were reinforced for that. So you became an honest person. Or you lied and didn't get caught, so you got away with it. So therefore, when you got away with it, then you got what? Positively reinforced, as we talked, right? And therefore, you became a liar. And every time you lied, you got reinforced for it because you got away with it. So how do we get to be who we are? It's nothing but a collection of learned behaviors. You were molded into being who you are. Rotter came up with what he called social learning. Skinner just basically talked about any conditioning that occurred from your parents or anybody else. Rotter talked more about not only from your parents, but also from your religions, from your cultures, your subcultures, your friends, that all these different people also molded you through conditioning. And they said that there's first a psychological situation, and in this particular situation that you have, depends on how you reacted, what winds up happening, you get reinforced for how you behaved, and then that reinforcement builds what's called expectancy. You expect that every time you do something, this is the reward you're going to get. All right, so let me put it into an example, because I think we learn by examples more than anything else. You're a young girl and you have 3 older brothers. 3 older, rough and tumble brothers, okay? And you're the youngest girl that's there. So they're watching a video, and of course they're going to watch videos they want to watch. So they're watching these shoot-'em-up adventure movies, right? People shooting each other and killing each other all the time. And they love it, and they're laughing, and they're wrestling with each other, and they grab you, and they throw you down, and they wrestle with you, okay? And finally, you say to them, I don't want to watch this anymore, okay? I want to watch Cinderella, okay? And they say to you, we're not going to watch Cinderella, get out of here, okay? And they wrestle you down to the ground, and they tie you up or something, okay, like older brothers do, okay? And so you get upset. And the next time they do it again, you say, no, let's watch something I want to watch. I want to watch Cinderella. Okay? And they say, no, you're not going to do that. And you run out. So what do? You run out and you go tell your mother. They won't let me watch Cinderella. They've been mean to me. Make them stop. So mom comes trudging in and says, what are you boys doing? What's wrong with you? You can't treat your sister that way. She wants to watch Cinderella. She's going to watch it. We don't want to watch that. Shut up. Okay, and boom. She puts it on, and mom says, you're all going to sit there and watch it and enjoy it. And they're looking at you, and you're going, okay, that's too bad. I'm watching Cinderella. So you get to watch Cinderella. That's your psychological situation, all right? Stuff that happens. So then what winds up happening, then next week they're watching their movies again. They watch 3 in a row, okay? And then you say, no, I want to watch Snow White. And they go, we're not going to watch Snow White, no way. And so she says, well, let's watch another Disney film. Okay, let's watch Aladdin. No, we're not going to watch that one. And they say, well, maybe, a little more adventure in that one. Well, I want to watch it. No, we're not going to watch it. Go away. So what do? You run back to mom, and you say, Mommy, they're not going to let me watch it. And then mom comes back, does the same thing, makes them all watch it. So basically you spend a lot of your childhood, running to mother, saying, Mother, save me, and mom comes in and saves you. And you get reinforced for that. Every time you run and complain, mom saves you, you get reinforced. So now you're 25 years old, and you're working in some advertising company, and you're sitting around thinking about ideas, and you come up with an idea, and everybody else says, God, that's the stupidest idea I've ever heard. And they disregard you, and they do it again to you. So what do? You run to your boss. And you go, they're not listening to me. Now, you probably don't do it that way, but you sound like probably a little 6-year-old. And what happens is the boss comes back and says, I don't know what the deal is here, but honestly, she's really an important part of this, and you need to listen to her. She doesn't stick her tongue out because she's 25 years old, but she's feeling like, yeah. So what winds up happening through psychological situations, okay, we get reinforced for certain behaviors, and that reinforcement leads us to expect that these behaviors are going to occur time and time again. And they wind up becoming self-reinforcing because we're going to wind up seeking situations where our personality traits, in this case, what we reinforce for, will be played out. Where can I go? What types of people can I be around that my personality will be reinforced? This girl is not going to go out with somebody who's going to say to her, like she'll say, gee, I have a tough time putting my gas in my car. Okay? And a guy might say, well, I guess you got to learn it. What do you think I'm going to do? Put gas in your car all the time? She's not going to go out with that person. She's going to wind up going out with somebody who's going to be self-reinforcing. So she's going to go out until she finds somebody. She says, I have a tough time putting gas in my car. And the guy says, well, I'll do that for you. It's okay. She says, oh, thank you. Okay? She's always going to look for those situations. She'll quit that job if the boss doesn't come in and rescue her. Why? Because that's what she expects in life. And according to Skinner and Dollard and Miller, what happens is we develop these personality traits through reinforcement. Then we seek situations in our life to keep those personality traits reinforced over and over again. This is wonderful and great. The downside of this, though, is that if you've had some pretty negative experiences in your life and you're used to being raised in a household where people are screaming and yelling at people all the time, where they're being abusive to you, now this is not a happy thing to say, but what winds up happening, that becomes such a habit that you will seek situations, go out with people who will do the same thing to you because that's all you know. And it's become reinforced. Don't let that happen to you, right? Okay, right away, you are thinking now and saying, well, I'm not going to let that happen to me. Dr. Link told me I shouldn't be able to do this. Well, when that situation comes up, there'll be a natural feeling for you to be attracted to those people and go towards them. But you need to say, no, that is not healthy to do something like that. And pull yourself out and be able to get a new self-reinforcing situations. Easier said than done, right? Easier said than done. But don't ever underestimate the power of conditioning. It's very, very powerful, as we discussed once before. All right, so what do you think about Skinner? Do you like Skinner and his views? Skinner was reinforcing. Yeah, I agree with Skinner. I think that's how we got to be who we are. So you select one if you strongly agree, two agree, and so on down the line. For those of you just doing this. So what do you think about Skinner? All right, so yeah, a lot of you like Skinner. I think a lot of our personality traits are based on reinforcement principles that are there. So I would agree with you. All right, here's another man, but recognize he's the only guy that seems to be smiling now. Okay, and you know what? The three previous people, even their view of, it's called view of nature of man and how they think people got to be who they are. Freud was very negative. He basically said, you know, you're born into this world with these instincts, okay, that are genetically programmed into us, and then we wind up with a lot of problems in our childhood, and then for the rest of our lives we try to deal with them. Okay, Jung was a little bit more positive. At least he said our lives was really at a great adventure that we were trying to learn. Skinner basically said we were born blank, and then the environment molds us. The humanists, like Abraham Maslow, do you remember that name? Maslow? He talked about what? Self-actualization. When we did that pyramid, right? The hierarchy of needs. The humanists came about in the late 50s and 1960s, and they really disregarded a lot of Skinnerian learning and Freud, and they said, no, we are not what they called it, a victim of our circumstances and our environments. We get to choose who we are. We can change ourselves any time that we want. And life is a process that we go through, and we are all a process that we go through so we can better ourselves. And all of us are born with really good natures, and all of us are aspiring to become self-actualized. This is good at this time of the semester because I can say, remember, we talked about that already. So these people were much more positive. Understand the concept. They're saying, no, we're all born good. What happens to a lot of us is that some of us got very, very fortunate, and we were born to parents who also were born to parents who were pretty positive and self-reinforcing, and they loved us and cared about us. Therefore, we felt good about ourselves, and our goodness naturally came out. But others of us were born to parents who didn't feel very good about themselves, and what winds up happening is they never gave us the love, the attention, the affection, the care, really to help us believe how good we are. But Maslow and later on Rogers both say that we still have that goodness at any time we can change it. At any time that you can change it. Freud basically said, yeah, you can change it if you go to therapy with him for years. Okay? But otherwise, the humanists said, no, we just want to put ourselves in situations where our goodness can come out. Okay? And there are lots of those situations that are there. Maslow talked about how we all aspire to be self-actualized. And he was one of the first people actually to do a little more concrete research on this. What he did was interview people who him and his colleagues proclaimed to be self-actualized, okay, which is a little bit of a bias there too, but at least they came up with characteristics of people who were self-actualized. Maslow was also one of the first people to write about what we now call as psychological self-help books. Read these books to try to improve yourself. So Maslow came up with what he called was characteristics of self-actualizers. So as I go through this, you might want to ask yourself, are you a self-actualizer? Do you have these characteristics? Okay. Hopefully you're going to say, yeah, I have quite a few of those. But I'd like to, learn these. What are characteristics of self-actualizers? Well, these people have an efficient perception of reality. They do not use defense mechanisms. Remember that chapter? All right, projection, denial, rationalization. They deal with reality. Sometimes we have to use defense mechanisms to get us through difficult situations, right, as we talked about, but sooner or later we have to say, no, I'm not dealing with reality. We've got to deal with reality. They have a comfortable acceptance of themselves. Right, we talked about know thyself, accept thyself, be thyself. Figure out who you are and accept yourself. This is me with my pimples and my weight. This is me, I can't do math. This is me, I love math. This is me, I'm introverted. This is me, I'm extroverted. All of these theorists basically said you've got to be able to figure out who you are, accept yourself, then be yourself. That's the real gateway to happiness. You need to be spontaneous. These people are spontaneous. They just go, woohoo, let's go do something. Let's go have some fun. But they're also what? Task-oriented. They have the balance that's there. There's fun and there's work. You can play, but you got to work hard. There's a sense of autonomy that they have. I want to be able to do things on my own instead of always relying on other people to tell me what to do, and I can never do anything else unless I'm with my friends. Okay? It's being autonomous in your life. There's a real appreciation they have of life. Wasn't it cold this morning? Wasn't that great? No. Okay. I mean, what these people do is they appreciate that. It sure was different when it was 108 and we were all going, God, it's so hot. Well, now it's cold. Enjoy it. I said this to you once before. Have you seen the trees? How the trees are changing colors? Isn't that pretty? No, they just get in the way. Get out of my car and they blow into my car. Then I have to clean my car. Yeah. No, do you have a real appreciation of life and what's going on in your lives? These people do. They have a fellowship with humanity. They connect with other people and they recognize this. What they do affects everyone else. If they're responsible, that helps other people to be responsible. They have a real fellowship with humanity. They have profound interpersonal experiences. They connect with other people. Not lots of people, okay? But they have special, close relationships with X number of people that are there. Your families, your loved ones. They have an unhostile sense of humor. What does that mean, an unhostile sense of humor? They can laugh at themselves. They laugh with other people, not at other people. But it's an important trait to have. And the last one is they have peak experiences. Now, when I read all this stuff, it kind of sounds like these people every day go up and go, God, isn't today so wonderful? I'm wonderful, you're wonderful. Everything is so great in everybody's lives. Isn't that great? We don't do that, do we? No, I mean, I'm just going, God damn it, it's another day. At least it's Thursday. Okay? Pretty soon it'll be Friday. But, there's only, 3 weeks left in the semester. I got so much to do. That Link guy, he makes everything do on one day. Sometimes we don't have good days. Well, these people don't have good days either. But what they do have is they have peak experiences. Because people are self-actualized, realize life isn't that perfect, that you go along in life like this, and then it doesn't get so well. Then it gets a little bit better, and then every once in a while they say, yeah, this is why I live. A peak experience. Yeah, this is great. And then you fall off a little bit, things are okay, and not so good. Yeah, they're better. Yeah, they're really good. I mean, if you're going out in a relationship, if you've been married for 20 years, you don't get up every morning and go, oh, I love you so much, you love me. I mean, that's something on television, okay? Most people don't do that. But every once in a while in that marriage, you sure better say, yeah, now this is why we're married. Right? If you don't do that, it's not much of a marriage. So it's like, yeah, this is great. Not so good. Oh, yeah, this is good. Right? They have peak experiences. Sometimes you read books like these psychological self-help books, and after reading it, you kind of feel like if you're not happy every second moment of your life, then life isn't good. That's just not the way we live life. At least I don't. Am I the only one? Most of you don't. All right, so you might sit there and you may say, how do I get to be self-actualized, Steve? Well, Maslow actually wrote about this. And he says if you want to become self-actualized and to improve yourself, these are some of the things that you might want to do. You want to be willing to change. And that sounds real simple, right? Willing to change. Most people aren't. Most people are not willing to change. 2, I think it's difficult to change and takes a lot of work to change. 3, I think you have to have the courage to change yourself. Because it does take a lot of work, and you do have to face some of your own particular issues and admit to yourself that you're not perfect. So you need to be able to be willing to change. You need to take responsibility for your life. You can't keep blaming your mother, your father, your brother, your teachers, your friends, the job, the economy, or whatever for your uncomfortableness or your unhappiness. You've got to take responsibility for your life and do something about it. Because no one else is going to do it for you, right? You got to be responsible for yourself. 3, you want to examine your motives. Why do you do the things that you do? The last 6 men and women I went out with, they all cheated on me. Every single one of them. I don't know what the deal is with these people. I just don't trust these people. Well, maybe you might want to examine your motives. And why do you keep, ready, be responsible for yourself, why do you keep picking the same people? If the last 6 cheated on you, then maybe you keep picking the same people over and over again. So why are you attracted to these type of people? Oh, I'm not. Yes, you are. It's not once, it's 6 straight times. Got to be something there. What is it about these people you're attracted to? You need to examine your motives of why you do the things you do. You want to experience life honestly and directly. Again, without defense mechanisms. Okay? Honestly and directly. Make use of positive experiences. We talked about this once before. We said that your brain is going to remember negative events and negative emotions more than positive ones. It's basically because we're still animals out in the world trying to survive. So when something negative happens to you, your brain needs to remember that because you might need that to survive. But what you need to do is keep a file folder of positive experiences, things that were good, that you can bring that back. Remember when we did that progressive mental relaxation and I asked you to visualize in a comfortable, relaxed, positive place? And I said to you, well, when your brain visualizes something, your brain thinks it's real, and that's how you feel. Well, if you can bring back positive experiences, see it, feel it, believe it, expect it, what's going to happen is that you'll begin to feel better. Keep a file folder of that stuff. Be prepared to be different. And I don't mean let me be so different that I shock everybody, because I want to be different just to shock people. No, you want to be different. You don't need to be going along with what other people go along with and do what they expect of you. You need to be different for yourself, because we all are very unique individuals. You want to get involved with life. Go do things. Instead of sitting around watching reality shows all the time. God, they're the most popular shows on television, aren't they? Let's watch other people screw up with their lives, okay? Or watch as they get through things. You'd rather watch other people rather than living your own lives. Well, go make your own reality movie, right? Go out and live life. Get involved. You want to get involved with other people? Do some service learning, okay? Give back to your communities. Just get involved with life instead of sitting on the outside watching as life goes by. You want to assess your progress. Anybody keep a journal or blog about your lives? Some of you do. That's assessing your progress. Go back and read the way you were thinking a year ago or 6 months ago, 2 months ago. And actually, when I think about it, Facebook is kind of that way, isn't it? The problem with Facebook is that everybody has such wonderful lives on Facebook. You know, everybody's, look at what I did. I think how wonderful this is. Everything is pretty damn positive on that stuff all the time. Well, your life isn't that wonderful. Sometimes I think there's a competition to see how many things you can post on there to show how wonderful your life is and so interesting your life is. I don't know if that's really a good progress that's there for people, but it could be used as that as you go back and change it out. Look at all your different statuses, I guess, as that changes. Life is a journey of learned opportunities. If you want to become self-actualized, you need to realize that. What that means is that if you falter in life, if you don't pass the test, if you don't pass the course, if somebody breaks up with you, if you have a traumatic experience, and I'm not making light of any of those because that stuff hurts, right? If you're upset, you're hurt, you're saddened, you're depressed about something, if you think of it as a learning opportunity, okay, you'll get through those events more. What can I learn from this? The person I've been living with for the last 10 years or married to just walked in and said, I'm leaving. Goodbye. Okay, and they took all the money and everything else, and they left. Hell, that's not very good, is it? But I don't think I'd say right away, "Whoa, this is a learning opportunity." No, but after a while, I'd probably get to that and say, "What can I learn from this?" Right? If you think of life as learned opportunities, you don't get stuck in things as much. And the last one is no one's perfect. No one's perfect. Right? So we all have issues. We're all on this journey trying to learn about ourselves and improve ourselves. All of these are what's called steps towards self-actualization. The other man who is a humanist, okay, is Carl Rogers. Okay, and he's a happy guy too. He used to smile a lot as well. All these guys are white. They're all male and they're all dead. Okay, at this point in their lives. But that's what the profession was like in the 1950s, okay, and 60s when these people wrote. Nowadays, there are more females in psychology than there are males, and of course, every ethnic group is also represented. Rogers was a little bit different. Rogers also believed that we are all born good. And what Rogers said was that in order for someone to feel good about themselves and develop who they really are, develop who you really are, when you were younger, you had to have a lot of unconditional positive self-regard. I know I skipped down there in a second, but unconditional positive self-regard. That's when you were born to those parents that Maslow also talked about, who looked at you and said, "I love you. You're wonderful. You're special." When you did something wrong, they said, "I don't like what you did. I love you." Right? Where we talked about that once before? Right? I love you. There was a television program, and it wasn't Carl Rogers, and I don't know what Mr. Rogers' first name was. Anybody know? Remember the television program, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood? Okay, what was his name? No one knows his first name. Just Mr. Rogers. His first name was Mr., right? So, and he was a very gentle man, just like Carl Rogers was, and he would look into the screens and look at all the children and say, "I just want to let you know that you're all very special. You're all special, wonderful children." Yes, you are. Well, that's what Rogers talked about. And Rogers said what winds up happening, people who go astray, who become dysfunctional, didn't get that when they were younger. When I was much younger, and I used to go to the American Psychological Association's meetings just about every year, one of the peak experiences there for all of us was to watch Skinner and Rogers debate. And I talked about this once before. Because Skinner was just, he was just real serious about everything. And Rogers is one of these men who would just come out and just, "Everybody's wonderful." And Skinner used to always say, "Well, everybody isn't wonderful. And just because you give love to people doesn't change everybody. It's all about conditioning, and that's what it's really about." And he would always go to Rogers and say, "Are you telling me serial murderers are good inside? People just murder people and cut them up. They're really good." And Rogers would say, "Somewhere inside them, there's a good person residing in there." So Skinner used to say, "Well, I hope someday you try to cure all those people." Okay, and everybody would giggle and laugh. Well, at the end of Rogers' life, when he retired, he did go to maximum security prisons and try to work with these people. But that was his belief. We all have goodness within us. We just need to be able to see that. Because what he said was that we all have an image of ourselves called a self-image, but we also have an ideal self who we want to be. And as long as you accept who you are and start moving towards that ideal, you're going to be pretty healthy. The problem comes in is when we see ourselves one way and then we say, "I want to be here. How come I'm not here?" Then we have what he calls an incongruency, and that creates anxiety and or depression. He said that as we were growing up, we were brought up in what's called conditions of worth. We did X, Y, and Z, and then we got what? Unconditionally positive self-regard reinforced for it, or we were gently told, let's not do this anymore. Okay? In a very, what we call humanistic way, a caring, loving way. And Rogers would say yes. And what do? We use a lot of Skinnerian conditioning, but more positive reinforcement than negative reinforcement and or punishment. Unconditional positive self-regard. Hopefully you got that when you were growing up. If you did get that, go back to your parents and say thank you. Okay? Because it's not everybody that got that. And if you didn't get that, Rogers would say, but you know what? You're worth it. And you're worthy of it, and you should look for people who can give that to you. Easier said than done, right? All right, what about Rogers? Do you like Rogers? I would feel good with Rogers. You like his views? Strongly agree, neutral, disagree? If you went to graduate school in psychology in the 1960s and 70s, you were either a Skinnerian behaviorist or a Rogerian humanist. Those were the two big theories that they always espoused. Now we have a lot of other theories. All right, so most of you would like Rogers, right? I think most people do. It makes us all feel good about ourselves. And he's very positive. I like the whole view that you can change anytime you want. Easier said than done for the 5th time today. All right, this is just out of your book, and what it talks about, you have congruency when your ideal self, self-image, and who you truly are all come together. That's a healthy individual. He would call these people fully functioning. That's the word he used, fully functioning, right? Maslow used the term self-actualized people. And what happens, you have an incongruency, therefore you may have issues. Some people have too much of an ideal self. They think they're incredible. Some don't have very much confidence in themselves, okay, in terms of their self-image and their truth self. So there's incongruencies there. So, what is happiness? Satisfaction is less a matter of getting what you want than wanting what you have. You catch that? Say it again. Satisfaction is less a matter of getting what you want than wanting what you have. Being satisfied with what you have. I don't have enough. I'm sick and tired of eating rice and beans every night or macaroni and cheese. I don't have any money. I'm barely scraping by to pay my bills. I drive this old, dilapidated old car. I never know when it's going to break down on me. I don't have a car. I got to take the bus. Yeah, but that's where you are now. You know, there's something to be said for enjoying that life at that time being. This is where you are now. Aspirations to get beyond that, yes. Okay? To get beyond that, yes, let's aspire, but let's enjoy what we have. Be appreciated for what we have. It may not be what you want. Okay? It may not be what you want, but I can take you to places in this country, in this world, that you can say, boy, you're better off, right? Can't we? How would you like to be in the Philippines now? Right? Where all social orders seem to have disappeared as people are trying to survive. Okay, that's there. So, you know, being satisfied with what you have and then aspiring for more. Which view do you think is the most viable out of all the ones we covered? Freud, Carl Jung, the behaviorists like Skinner, the humanists like Maslow, Rogers. Which one do you think is the most viable? The one you think explains how we got to be who we are the best. Now, I would put probably number 5 on this, and I'd say biopsychosocial. How we got to be who we are is a combination of, you know, bio, as we talked about, psycho and social, but just out of interest. Okay? So, most of you would say the behaviorists and the humanists that were there. I think that's what most people would say. They're the most current views that are there. I wouldn't disregard Freud and Jung. I think they were some of the originators of a lot of this, and they had some keen insights for over 100 years ago when they wrote a lot of this. All right, the last thing we want to just talk about in terms of personality is, again, in your textbook, they always talk about positive psychology. So this is right out of the research on positive psychology. Once again, Seligman basically has done research with, God, his research studies are well, probably very close to over No, there are over 1 million people right now where he's done this research with, which, if you know anything about psychological research, that's a lot of people to do this with. So he's come up with what he says are 6 traits of people who are very psychologically healthy. 1, they have wisdom and knowledge. I'd probably put patience in with that as well. They have wisdom and knowledge. As you've gone through your life, you've acquired wisdom and knowledge. We talked about that in regards to Maslow and self-actualization. With Erickson, remember that? The end of life, the wisdom that comes in the end of life. These people have courage. Here's that word again, courage. They have a connection with humanity. There's that word again, a real connection with humanity. Here's a little different term, though. They have a justice perspective. Fairness is important, a justice perspective, that it's fair and justice should be served. They have a temperance. What is temperance? A balance in their life. A balance in their life. There's fun, right? And there's working. A temperance. It's a temperance across all of their personality traits. They're not super extroverted, but they're not super introverted. They're more comfortable because who they really are is extroverted, but they have a little respect, okay, for people who are introverted and a side of them that gets quiet. They're not super introverted, but they are comfortable being introverted within themselves. They don't have to be the life of the party, okay? But when they need to, they can come out, okay, and be more assertive and to talk. They have a temperance in regards to their personality traits. And the last thing that people do who are psychologically healthy, they transcend their issues and problems. They transcend and grow beyond it. That's you people, right? Or it will be, all of us. All right, now let's switch gears a little bit and let's talk about personality tests. There's a whole chapter on personality theories. So now let's talk about taking psychological tests called personality tests. There's a book called the Burroughs Mental Measurements Handbook. I can't believe I even remembered that. And it's about this thick. It's well over 1,000 pages. And in it, it has all kinds of psychological tests. There are psychological tests about personality. There are psychological tests about achievement and aptitude and honesty, how to get along with others. There are all kinds of different tests that they have that are there. What we're going to talk about, though, are tests that will depict who you are, personality tests. If you wanted to, you could go to the Career Center here, and in the Career Center, they'll give you a battery of tests that'll talk with you about, one, what your interests are, but they will also give you the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator and correlate that with careers. But you can also use that just in terms of personality. You can get online and do a lot of these tests. You can go to the Learned Optimist site and take some of Seligman's tests on there as well. But the grandparent of all psychological tests, the psychological test that more research has been done with, is the MMPI-2. It's called the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory number 2, because it's been revised. Okay? So let me show you this. This is basically the test that they're going to give, especially in psychiatric situations. If you ever went into a psychiatric hospital, okay, because you committed yourself or you got committed, okay, one of the things they would do, as long as you were somewhat lucid, okay, they'd give you the MMPI. Because as you look at the scales, I'm going to show you another one so you don't have to twist your head around there. Okay? These are the clinical subscales, the most important one. As you look at this, you'll recognize, especially when we start on the next chapter, that a lot of these have to do with psychological disorders. There's paranoia, psychopathic deviation, schizophrenia, mania, depression, okay? A lot of the more severe disorders that are there. This test will give you a pretty good indication. This test is also given when somebody gets a psych evaluation after they may have murdered X number of people, and they plead insanity. Insanity is not a psychological term. Insanity is a legal term. Okay? So when they do the psych evaluations, they'll give this test. This test has a lie detector built into it. They can detect whether or not people are lying, and it does a very good job of it. Okay? I can't tell you how it is, because then I'll give away that. But it is done that way. And some of the questions are very explicit questions. Some of the questions are questions like, I hear voices. Voices tell me what to do. That would be what? Schizophrenia. Okay? Now, if I was faking it, and I was going, yeah, voices told me to kill those people, I better check that one off. I mean, you'd see that. But then there are other questions in there that are what's called follow-up questions that are embedded in there that if you were trying to lie, then you would answer the questions that way. And they pick that up really easily. But if I was truly schizophrenic and I said, yeah, I hear voices, how do they know? Okay? What winds up happening is that there are other scales on there that will very easily pick up that, yes, I really am schizophrenic in that way. So it's a very involved test used really for a lot of psychiatric evaluations. They do not use it here in the counseling center. Okay? You have to be a licensed psychologist or psychiatrist to give this test, or at least be trained in it. If you were going to be a police officer, that's a mandatory test that they'll give you, thankfully, right? Okay? And you better be able to, I don't know if I use the word pass, but you better be able to at least come up with some good results that are there, because you will not be, well, we don't want give those people guns, right? In that way. But as you see, what they do with this, they may have given this test to hundreds of thousands of people who've already been clinically diagnosed as depressed, and then they can get a profile. Someone who's depressed scores high, obviously, in depression, pretty high in hysteria, low in this one, a little higher in that. Schizophrenic score this way. Someone who's somewhat normal is that way. Right? By the way, it's no fun just being normal. But you can do all kinds of levels that are there. This test also has subscales in it. It has hundreds of subscales where they begin to combine different parts of this to come up with how creative people are, how well it is to work with you. I mean, there's all kinds of fun scales with this. All right, so that's the MMPI-2. Right, let me go back for a second and say there are other tests that you can give. And by the way, a lot of psychologists don't give projective tests. Okay, they've really gotten away from doing these, but these are kind of fun to do. So I'll show you some of these projective tests. A projective test is going to be a scene, a story, a picture, a nonsensical picture. And what they do is they show you this, and then they ask you questions about it. And what winds up happening, we begin to project our thoughts and feelings into the picture. And it comes basically from your unconsciousness. And some of you have seen these. You ready? So if I was giving you the Rorschach ink blot test, I wouldn't show you all three at once. Okay, I just show you one at a time. So don't look at these two. Look at this one. Now, when you give this exam, what you ask someone is, okay, I'm going to show you a picture right away without thinking about it. Tell me what you see. So it has to be quick reaction that comes where? Out of your unconsciousness. So, boom, what do you see in the first one? A what?
A roach.
A roach, all right? What do you see?
It's not a spider.
A spider, what do you see? You don't know, you got to say something. What? You saw a spider too, what do you see? A dog. A beetle. A what? A bat. Eh? All of you are too healthy. Those are the most common answers to this stuff. You're right. What about the second one? What do you see in the second one? What do you see in the second one? Has to be fast. What do you see in the second one? A blob. What do you see in this? I just asked you. What do you see in the second one?
Horse school.
Okay. What do you see in the second one? Somebody said a Georgie O'Keeffe painting. Okay. What do you see in the second one? Dog. Okay. Again, kind of common ones. Now, what about the third one? We all see a butterfly, all right? Pretty common stuff that you're there. Most of you have normal answers. Now, what you're doing, you're doing one, and another one, and another one, and another one, and another one, and one of them. The first grouping, most people see what you all see. Then after a while, you get kind of tired, and you go, I don't know, wait. And the stuff that you blurt out after a while are the ones they're going to start writing down, because that really comes out of your unconsciousness. And then what you do, after a series of these, you may wind up getting some type of consistency that's there. Let's just say that I'm a sexual deviant, okay? That all I do is I have sex on my mind. I may even have been arrested for some sex crime. And they start flashing these pictures up at me. So what do I see right away? Well, there are two testicles there. There's a penis here. Ooh, that's a big penis there. There's two of them together there. There's another one over there, another one there. That's a vagina. Now, hopefully you all didn't see that. Some of you might have in the beginning. But you see what happens? That's what I'm thinking about. That's what's back here. And it becomes to be a consistent pattern that you can develop. Now, the more interesting one that you can do with people is this one. And what you say to someone is, tell me a story. Okay, so now the story wouldn't just be one story. It's going to be a detailed story. So I'd say, well, tell me a story. Well, it's a mother and her daughter. Well, tell me more about that. Oh, it's a mother and a daughter. The daughter's kind of upset. The mother really doesn't care. Well, tell me more about that. And you keep telling more and more. Now, I might say that for this picture. Others of you are going, what are you talking about? That's not it. This isn't a child. This is an old lady. Look at the wrinkles that are up there. This is not a child. This is Gollum from The Lord of the Rings. Okay? She really cares what's going on. No, she doesn't care. This woman's biting her on the shoulder, and she's saying, ouch. I don't know, okay? But what you're doing is you're projecting what your view of the world is. And it's not just one picture. I'm going to show you another one and another one and another one. And they're built to be kind of vague, so you read into it. You project what you think into it. Kind of fun to do. Want to have some fun and do a couple of projections? You ready? We got to look at this and make your answers quick. If you were going to be a fruit, what fruit would you be? Would you be an apple, a banana, an orange, a grapefruit, a grape, a peach, a strawberry, a mango, a kiwi? I can only do 10, so. Got to do it fast. I am a... Boom, 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 boom. All right, so what do we have in this class? We've got a lot of, strawberries and mangoes. All right. So the next part of this would be, well, tell me about that. Okay? And by the way, that's a classic therapist question. Tell me about that. Okay? Because what that means, it's an open-ended question. I'm not going to say, well, why do you like a ripe strawberry? Well, I'm giving it away already, right? So strawberries are what? Ripe. They're what? Ripe. Sweet. What else is strawberries? Come on, strawberries. They're eye-catching. Colorful. Eye-catching. Juicy. Everybody likes strawberries. So I'm making this up. All right? Mangoes. Okay? Boy, that's pretty different. Mangoes got a lot of different people in here. It has a core to it, though, doesn't it? Kind of hard on the outside. You have to wait, though, for a while for it to get right. Get to know it a little bit before you get to its core. I'm making this up, but if I was sitting here and you were asking me, well, tell me about it, what I'm making up is really what I probably think about myself. Grapefruits, you sour people. No. But you wouldn't say that. You'd say I'm this way for this particular reason, right? Kiwis, very unique, very different. How about this question? If you were going to be a motor vehicle, what would you be? A Cadillac, the old-fashioned Cadillacs. I'm giving it away now. A truck. How about a luxury car, a Mercedes, Lexus, BMW, a Volkswagen? How about a Porsche, a Ferrari, or a Lamborghini? A motorcycle, a convertible, a Corvette, an electric car, or other. Now, this is always an interesting question. If you had as much money as you wanted to spend on a car, what car would you buy? And the answer would be that car would probably be a symbol of your personality. And that's what this would be, a symbol of your personality. I bet you I have a lot of fives. What are we thinking? Yeah! Porsches, Ferraris, Lamborghinis. Expensive, well put together, well made, fancy, bright. What else? All right. Awesome. All right, just like you. Right. Got a couple of motorcycle people in here, right? Quite a few. What do motorcycles represent?
I'll just say something about Porsches and stuff.
You what?
I'll just say anything about
Number
number 5.
5.
I'll say powerful.
Powerful. Okay. What about motorcycle? Independent, right? Free, independent. That's there. Dangerous. Well, that's right. Think twice about going out with them. All right? The electric car people. Okay? Conservationist, into nature. Is that right? Well, what about others? Should I put something in? Should I get rid of convertibles? I guess to me that means freedom. What's other? Who had another one that I could put on there? What's that? A Range Rover? Like an Escalade or a SUV? Something like that? SUVs? Okay, I can do that. Somebody in my other class started naming off what I would call muscle cars. Do you know what those are? Like the Mustangs and the Camaros and...
What about the hybrid?
Oh, yeah, I should put a hybrid on there now. That's what I meant by electric car. Okay, in that way. All right, I'll change that next semester. All right, one more. If you were going to be a state in the United States, you would be what? Because each one of these also has a representation. It's a stereotype, I know, but it's a representation, it's a symbol who you may feel this is who I am. All right, we got that one? I can guess what's going to be the most popular one, right? No, it's probably be Texas. No, it wasn't. It was Hawaii. Wow, I got a bunch of what? Mellow potheads. No, I got a bunch of mellow, relaxed, easygoing people. This is the first class ever that I've ever had Hawaii being the most popular. It's almost always Texas in that way. So what does Texas represent? Independence, right? Strength. California. What's number 6? Nobody chose Vermont. Okay. I actually had people choose Nebraska. Nebraska would be conservative, salt of the earth, dependable. No? That's there? All right, all kinds of other ones that are there. Anything I should take out? Should I add something? Who are my others? What would you put?
Probably Tennessee.
Tennessee. What does Tennessee represent? Okay. Okay. Colorado, maybe? Does that have an image to you? That's there? No. Okay. Outdoorsy? All right, so you all know who you are. Now, this weekend when you go out on a date, excuse me, but what kind of fruit would you be? People will walk out on you. All right, let's do a review for this chapter. Sample questions that could be on your multiple choice test. So let's think back, look at your notes, think back. Now, this is one of these questions which is not a major tenet of Freud's developmental theory. Those of you who do multiple choice tests too quickly, and some of you do it much too quickly, you run through it too fast, sometimes you miss this one. I'm looking for the one that's the negation, right? The negative that's there, which is not a major tenet of Freud's developmental theory. Development proceeds through a series of stages. The latency period is a time of rapid sexual development. The first years of life help shape the adult personality. Feeding, toileting, and early sexual experiences are important early events. Which is one of these that Freud was not part of his theory. Now, you're going to have to read into this a little bit. These aren't that explicit. For those of you who are visiting, we do this for participation points. Okay? You can talk with other people about it. All right, has everybody got this? Let's get your answers in. All right, we got it. 58.9. Go for 60. 59. All right. So it's 53% are correct, right? The latency period is a time of rapid sexual development. No, it's hidden. Okay, there's no. Freud said there isn't a lot of sexual development during that time. Number 4, feeding, that would be the oral stage. Toileting would be the anal stage. Early sexual experiences would be the phallic stage that are there. So we did talk about that one. The first years of life help shape, that was his main part of his theory, that childhood shape your adult personality. And it does proceed in stages: oral, anal, phallic, latent. All right, do another one. According to Carl Rogers, an individual who is open to feelings and trusts his or her inner urges is, what did he call? The healthy person was what? 1, fully functioning. B, prepotent. 3, ideal. Or 4, incongruent. It's the word he used. Again, Rogers talked a lot about find out who you are, accept yourself, be yourself, trust yourself. And these people were called what? All right, so let's get your answer in. Okay, 1, 2, 3. One more. 59. There we go. All right, fully functioning. That's the term he used, right? Fully functioning, right? He didn't use ideal. He just talked about ideal being in terms of being congruent or incongruent with that. Let's do one more for your test, which starts today, goes through Monday. Last day to take the test is Monday. The chief use of the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory, number 2, is to identify persons who are, 1, especially creative, 2, have psychiatric problems, 3, are androgynous, and 4, have negative self-concepts, which is the chief use of it. And I talked about that. By the way, you can use the MMPI for each one of these. Okay, there is a subscales on these to come up with this, but there's one that's the chief use of it. This is if you ever find somebody who'll give you this test, this is a fascinating test to take. And someone who really, really knows the test well can tell you numerous things about yourself. It's that well researched. All right, you got this one pretty quickly, right? Let's get the 59 there. All right, everybody got their answers in? Did you do this one? Okay. Just making sure. Right. All right, have psychiatric problems, right? So, okay.